Good afternoon. We're going to begin the Assembly Budget Subcommittee number 5, Public Safety. I'm Assembly Member Reginald Byron Jones Sawyer Sr., Chair of the committee. I'm going to make a couple of comments, but before I do that, I'm going to allow the committee members to make some comments, and it looks like we have a visitor, former member of the committee, who was my partner in crime once upon a time, Assemblymember Melissa Melendez, but I'll allow Mr. Tom Lackey and Mr. Freddie Rodriguez, if you have some opening comments. This is your first meeting of Budget Sub-5.
Yeah, just real quickly, it is an honor to be part of this process, and I look forward to some meaningful discussion on this very critical issue of public safety. All these areas of concern that we have jurisdiction over, budget considerations are very critical to the public safety consideration of our public, and I think there's nothing more important that our government does than provide public safety.
Thank you.
I just want to thank the chair for having us again here, and look forward to a productive year. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez is a veteran too. Did you want to wait to make any? Okay. And I welcome everyone here to our first meeting as we look at the budget. There's several issues and items that we want to obviously look at. Last year, I think we did a phenomenal job in looking at recidivism and really tackling it and taking the bull by the horn and starting to taking the CDCR. We have corrections and rehabilitation, and the R in rehabilitation for a long time had been small R, and I think we made it to a medium-sized R. We're trying to get it to a big R again, and with the help of Secretary Beard, who has been phenomenal in working with us to bring that back into the system. I think we all believe if we do this right, rehabilitation, we can reach almost all of our goals, whether it's the number of reducing the size of prisons, which as the governor once told me, we should be ashamed at the number of people we incarcerate in California, and I agree with him. As a society that believes in forgiveness, but most important, a society that believes in second chances, we need to be better at that. And if there are individuals who are incarcerated that can fall within those rules, we should be able to provide them steps to get there. Unfortunately, in a society like this, we will always have to have room for individuals who do not want to participate in this society in a lawful, sane way. And we will always have to, unfortunately, have incarceration centers which will house them and keep our citizens and residents of the state of California and probably this country safe from them. And so as we start looking through the budget, ways that we can financially promote all of those goals that we talk about every day, I'm hoping that we take that next step to realizing that, and so that we look up one day and we do not have the kind of numbers that we have right now, and we're bringing people back into the community. So with that, they will go ahead and take roll, because I think I've stalled enough to where we have a quorum.
Jones Sawyer.
Here.
Campos.
Here.
Lackey.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Assemblymember Campos, I allowed each member, if they wanted to say a few words, an opportunity, since this is our first meeting, this is your first meeting, to say a few words if you want to.
Well, I really am excited and looking forward to being a part of this committee. The subcommittee, public safety, has been an issue that I've worked on for the past 15 years. So that tells you that I started this at the local level. And to be a part of this subcommittee regarding budget and the areas that we focus on is going to be a challenge, but I also believe that through the leadership of the chair, as I've watched you handle this committee, that we'll make progress and be able to make some bold decisions as we move forward. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Campos. And as we all know, you put in a lot of years, and you started at 10, so that's even more phenomenal. So let's start with California Department of Corrections, issue number 1, CDCR population trends. And we have the honor of having Secretary Dr. Beard here today.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Or I'm sorry, good afternoon.
Yes.
Time's flying here.
Well,
I'm pleased to be here today, Mr. Chairman. And,
thank you.
Want to thank you and the members for having me. Would you like me to just go ahead and make an opening comment here?
I would love for you to make an opening comment. As you know, we like to just jump right into it and get it started.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is the status of our population, because that's something that's really critical to the 3-judge panel issues. I think many of you know that we hit the 137.5 over a year early, hit it about a month ago, and so we're below the final benchmark. And actually, as of today, we're at 135.7%. So we keep going down. We're going down at about 0.3% a week. I expect that may slow down in a few weeks, but right now, we're still going down, so that's good. Now, why did we hit that number so soon? I think we hit it because of Prop 47. I think there's no question about that. While there's a number of other things we're doing, those other things would not have got us to where we are till later this year or maybe even early next year. But Prop 47 really ramped up quicker than we thought. We were sort of looking at what happened with Prop 36, and Prop 36 took about 3 years to get really going. And, we're 3 years into it now, and we've had about 2,000 releases under Prop 36. The first year, we had very few. Here, with Prop 47, within the first week, we already had people going out. And we now have over 2,700 inmates that have been released under Prop 47. We were releasing at a rate of about 250 to 300 a week. That has fallen off the last 3 weeks, and we're down to, about 150 or so a week, so it's under 200. We still have about 1,600 inmates to release out of the original 5,300. And the difference there is 1,000, and those 1,000 are people that went out on the natural during this particular period of time. So we're doing well with that, and we of course have other population measures that are also bringing down our population, and they're all court-ordered. One of them is the additional credits for the nonviolent second strikers, where the credits were increased from 20 to 33%. We have released about 5,500 inmates on average 80 days early because of the additional credits that they received. So that is starting to have a greater impact. That was done prospectively, so it started last February, and so the impact's getting bigger as we move forward. We also have medical and elderly parole that the judges have ordered, but we've only had less than 200 inmates who have been released. Under that, we don't expect big numbers in either one of those. We have the new 2-for-1 credit that is to be given to some minimum custody inmates. There's approximately 4,000 potentially eligible inmates there that could get those additional credits. Again, that's not going to add up to a whole bunch, but it will help bring the population down. And the next thing that has a big impact is the parole for the nonviolent second strikers at 50%. This year, there will be about 6,000 inmates eligible for that. We have a screen in place for those people, and if they have bad behavior, gang involvement, things like that, they don't get referred to the board. Anybody who passes through that screen goes to the board for them to review and make a decision on. Right now, we're passing about 50% through. That's about what's going through. So you could estimate that roughly 3,000 will go to the board this year. What we don't know yet is, since the board just started hearing cases, we don't know what that release rate will be. So we're going to have to wait, and it'll take some time to see, and probably the first people will be going out in late this month or early April under that initiative, because they have to notice people, and it takes some time, even though we started referring cases to them in January. So with everything we're doing, things are going well, at least as far as the benchmarks for the three-judge panel. The problem is that is a necessary thing, but it's not a sufficient thing. The three-judge panel has made it very clear that they want a durable remedy. They want something that's sustainable. And so to get us there, eventually, something is going to have to be codified. Some change in the law is going to have to occur, because Prop 47 won't by itself get us to where we need to get. And we have to do something more than that. And you say, well, you have all the stuff that the courts have ordered you to do. The problem with that is, once the courts go away, our authority to do that goes away. So if we don't codify what the courts, or something else that would give us a similar impact, then the courts aren't going to go away, because they're going to see, as soon as we go away, this stops and your population starts going back up. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think the 105 report that came out a few months ago was very clear about how the tough work that we have to do here, and we have to come up with a way to come up with a durable and sustainable process that continues to bring our population down. And at the same time, we have to remember that the judges don't much like our out-of-state inmates. So that durable remedy is going to probably have to include at least starting to bring down the out-of-state inmates. So speaking of out-of-state inmates, now that we're at the benchmark, can we start bringing them down? Or can we start doing something with some of the other in-state capacity that we have? And how much can we reduce? We've had some people that have written some reports and made some suggestions and recommendations about that, and they may be accurate. We don't know at this particular time, and we're going to have to monitor things very closely to see what we can do. I will assure you that it is a priority, and it's a priority of mine. I mean, particularly with out-of-state inmates, I've said before that it's a necessary evil. I don't think it's a good idea to have California inmates all the way in Mississippi and Oklahoma and Arizona. It's not good for a whole bunch of reasons. So I do think we need to do something there, not only because the courts want it, but because I think in the end of the day it's the right thing to do. But it's a complex issue. There's a lot of moving parts here. One of the things is we have to remember is we need some kind of a buffer between the 137.5 and where we are. I think that buffer should be between 2,000 and 2,500 inmates. The reason I think that is because that's about what our growth was before we started this process. And so if anything were to happen and we were to start growing again at that same rate, we would at least have a year to figure out something to do so that we didn't have to early release inmates into the community. So it would give us some time, and that's why I think we have to remember to keep a buffer in place. The second reason that it's a problem is that right now with second strikers, it's going to look when they start that we have more going out. But there's a backlog there, and once that backlog goes, then that process, they'll slow down. And it's the same thing with Prop 47. We had 5,300 inmates to go out, 2,700 have gone out, another 1,000 on the natural. Once that 5,300 backlog's gone, it's only then the front-end diversion that we're going to have, so we're going to see a slowing of the releases once that occurs. And we don't know what that final offset will be from Prop 47, because there could be changing charging practices, for instance. And I just use as an example of what happened with second strikers after the AB 109. After that, we saw a real significant increase in second strikers. Something changed in the way people were being sent to prison. And so we have to be very cautious that we don't see a similar change with the Prop 47 that would affect the number that are coming into our system. The fourth thing is that we are having trouble making projections beyond a year or two. And part of the reason we're having trouble making projections is that projections rely largely on trend data. They rely on what has happened in the past, and you apply that to the future. And we've just had so many changes and so many recent changes. Even AB 109 is not that far in the past, and Prop 47 and Prop 36, and then all of the other things that the judges have ordered us to do. All of these are creating new changes, along with the changing sentencing practices and things like that that we're seeing. So we've got to be very cautious that when we're making projections of where we think we're going to go. And that's why the last projections we put out were only, I believe, 2 years out, because we've lost that trend data. We used to have 20 years of trend data that we could rely on. And that's just not available anymore. So until we get more of that, more understanding of what's occurring, we're going to have to be cautious, and we can't go out too far. And if we do go out too far, we're probably going to be wrong. And that's the last thing we want to do is give projections that aren't right. And the last thing is that everybody knows we have the infills that are going to be opening up next year. They're projected to open in February. They will give us 2,300 additional beds. Right now, they're on track for February, but if we were to have some bad weather or something, they could be delayed for several months. That could happen. And so, we've got to be careful that we don't make plans for something that may not exist. And the other thing is we don't know how we're going to be able to count those beds. In the past, when we brought capacity online, we were able to count the entire thing the day we opened it. It appears now that the courts may want us to do something lesser. They may not allow us to count that capacity till we actually have bodies in the beds. And if that happens, then it takes whatever time it is to open that institution and to get the beds all filled. So those are some of the challenges that we have, and that's why we are going to move as quick as we can to bring down the out-of-state or other capacity to save the money. I want to save money as well as everybody else wants to save money. I think that's very important, but we're going to keep public safety in mind, and we're not going to move so precipitously that we end up overshooting the mark, and then we end up in having the compliance officer that the courts have appointed coming in and telling us to start releasing people. But, we will be happy to work with you and keep you apprised, and I think every month we get down the road, we're going to know a little bit better how things are going, and we will do what we can to try to bring the costs down, because I know that's important, and I know there's other places to spend the money. A little bit about our budget, and I'll just be very brief. The request is for $10.3 billion. It does represent about a $159 million increase. And a lot of people are saying, why is your budget going up and your population's going down? And there's two primary reasons. Number one, just because you take a few inmates out of an institution, a few hundred out of an institution, you don't save the entire cost, the average daily cost, which is like $63,000 a year, a little over $63,000 a year. You don't save that. You only save a portion of that cost, a very small portion of that cost. And so if you really want to save money with the prison system, you have to close prisons, because it's staffing that drives the cost, and then you can reduce staffing. Obviously, we can't close prisons because of the capacity issue, and so we got a sort of a conundrum there. The other thing that's driving the increase here is the courts. If you look at the three of the four major drivers, the Coleman Court, because of changes with mentally ill and use of force and ADSEG, of placement of mentally ill inmates, the Plata receiver needs additional positions, and opening the infills, which gets to the capacity issue. Those are the three of the big drivers of the costs going up for the prison system. I now just like to talk a little bit about some of the things that you mentioned, recidivism, and really where our focus is for the 15-16 budget year. And two primary things. One is safer prisons, and the other is to continue to work on reducing recidivism. And when we get to safer prisons, one of the biggest things, and I know, Mr. Chairman, you were at the drug interdiction hearing that I testified in front of the Senate Budget and Public Safety Committee, Finance and Public Safety Committee yesterday. It was a joint committee. And I laid out in detail some of the reasons why I thought. And so I'm just going to go over sort of and summarize a little bit of what I said there. Number one, it's important that we get the drugs out of the prison system to make the system safer for staff and for inmates and to reduce the violence. Number two, and we don't often think of this, it's important that we get the drugs out to have a more conducive environment for programming, and we have less lockdowns, less modified programs. And if we don't have a conducive environment, we can offer all the programs we want. And we're going to have a high recidivism rate. In fact, I think that's one reason, at least, that California has historically had a high recidivism rate. And we're going to make a difference in that. We're going to all work together and get that down, and it's not going to be there when we're done. The third reason that it's important is our visitors that we have coming into the institutions. Many of them feel compelled and even feel threatened to bring drugs into our system. We know that because we catch them and they readily give it up, and they don't really seem committed to what they're doing. And so we want to give them a reason. We don't want to arrest a bunch of women, which is what we're arresting every weekend, 4 and 5 and 6 women. We don't want to do that. We want to give them a reason to say, hey, I can't bring the drugs in. They've got stuff there to stop it. And so we want to give our staff the tools to do that. Over the years, we have not given them the tools that they need to really do it. They do the best they can, and they've done a good job, but it's an overwhelming task, and so we need to give them more help. And so we have embarked on an enhanced drug interdiction program. It's a comprehensive program. We did get some money last year, $5.2 million, and we're using that to focus on 11 institutions. We're going to do an intensive focus on 3 institutions, do everything that we can think to stop the drugs, and then another 8 we're going to do a more moderate approach. Allows me to do more institutions and deal with this problem more across the board, but it also lets me make a comparison. Do we really need to do an intensive everywhere, or will the moderate get us pretty much where we want to go? So it gives us some things to compare there. We've started rolling them out. I would have liked to have gotten it going quicker, but you have all the purchasing regulations, you have unions that you have to talk to, you have regulations you have to put in place, you have training that you have to do. And so we're moving well. We have the new drug interdiction machines, the ion scanners, which are the same machines that TSA uses in the airports. We have them in place in 8 of our 11 institutions. We'll have the other 3 done probably by April. And we are collecting data so we can see if we are making a difference here or if we need to do more or something different. Things seem to be going well. I'm not getting a lot of complaints. I was really glad to have that hearing yesterday. And we got some good ideas, and it is a pilot program, and so we are going to look at making a couple changes because we really don't want to upset people. We don't want to cause people problems. We just want to stop the drugs. That's all we want to do. And so we're going to try and look at the best way that we can do that. The other thing that we're doing to try to improve the safety in our institutions is we started a concept that we call enhanced yards. And these are yards within the institutions where we give the inmates increased privileges and increased programming. And they can stay on that yard if they don't get involved in gangs, drugs, or violence. If they get involved in any of that, they're off the yard. And I believe we're going to find more and more inmates wanting to gravitate towards those yards because I really believe a lot of the inmates who come into our prison system don't want to be involved in the gangs but don't have any choice. We're going to try to give them a choice. And so we have a pilot program there. I'm hoping to be able to expand that as we move forward. And then the final thing I want to touch on is is this whole thing of reducing recidivism. And I think it's important. It's a core public safety mission of ours to reduce recidivism, and it is because most of these people are going home someday. And so we need to do what we can while they're with us. So the first thing is to get that conducive environment that I mentioned, to get the drugs out and give them safe places. The second thing is to properly assess inmates so that we get the right inmates in the right programs. And I think we're doing that, and I think we're doing a pretty good job there. The third thing is to get the programs rebuilt. Between 2008 and 2010, the programs were all taken down because of the downturn in the economy. Yep. You can't do a whole lot of recidivism reduction with no programs, and it makes prisons unsafer because you increase idleness as well. Well, we now have 42,000 educational slots up and running. We have 8,000 vocational training slots or CTE slots. We have 8,000 inmates involved in college, and we expect that to go up because the recent community college bill has encouraged them to help with inmates, and so I think that number next year will be higher. And at the end of this budget year, we should have just over 8,000 substance abuse beds available. Now, as we talked about in the hearing yesterday, part of that comprehensive drug interdiction program is also to provide treatment to inmates who have positive urines or who are caught with drugs. And at the end of the day, to be able to do that, we may end up needing more substance abuse beds than the 8,000. And that still, by the way, is below the 10,000 that existed prior to the downturn in the programs years ago. The other thing we have up and running that is going to help a lot with recidivism reduction is all 13 reentry hubs are in operation. And that's a place where we focus our programming, a lot of our programming, and we take inmates the last 4 years that they're with us and we put them there and see what programs they still need. They may have gotten another institution, but if they still have a need, they get those additional needs at those hubs. They get their Cal ID and their Medi-Cal card if that's something that they need. And I think we're going to be able to be putting out inmates who are better prepared. Now, that being said, there's one final piece if we really want to do a good job in reducing recidivism. And that one final piece is we need reentry centers in our local communities. And we did get some money last year. It's been a little slow. It's tough to get quality reentry centers out there that have the certifications and things that they need to provide the programming that we need provided to the inmates, because not everybody has to go through a reentry center, but a fair number do, and particularly the mentally ill, and that's what our focus is, the mentally ill. It's not exclusive to mental illness, but it's a focus. And so those centers, it will put the people in and will make sure they have a place to live, and so they don't end up on the streets. And we'll try to get them a job so they have some money and they don't fall back into something else. And very importantly, we'll get their aftercare. If they have mental health issues, we'll get that set up. If they have medical issues, we'll get that set up. If they have substance abuse issues, which many of them are going to have ongoing substance abuse aftercare needs, we'll get that going. And I'm really hopeful. We've got 2 centers that we believe that we'll have running this budget year. And then we really would like to step up and get a number of others going next budget year, and we may be making an initial proposal of what additional monies we may need to do that as we get into the next budget year. But I think that's critical. And if we can get this last piece and do the other things that I said, I think we can begin addressing this historically, high recidivism rate here. There's no reason California has to have one of the highest ones in the nation. In the early 1970s, California was out in front. They had one of the lowest rates. They were the state people looked at. And so that's what we want California to again be. And I think if we all work together and do this stuff, we can get there and we can do that. So I thank you for indulging me and letting me say a few things, and appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
And thank you, Dr. Beard. It was very comprehensive. In fact, I think you covered issue 1 and 3. But I'm going to go ahead, and maybe that'll just shorten when we get to 3, when you come back. And when we ask questions, it'll abbreviate it, or we'll ask a bunch of questions now, and all we got to do is vote on 3 when it comes. But we'll see when it gets to that. But before we begin, we'd like to hear from the Department of Finance and the LAO, who always provide excellent suggestions and commentary. You know you're the smartest group. You're better than any other subcommittee group, so you have big shoes to fill.
Josh Gauger, Department of Finance, and no, we think the Secretary was a very comprehensive overview. We have nothing additional to add at this time.